welcome back to another video. Today's video is a book versus movie, and I'm continuing my series of the Twilight books versus their movie counterparts. So today is Eclipse. Eclipse is probably my favorite of the entire Twilight series, book and movie. I don't know, I just like the idea that it's all coming together and that there's going to be this big battle and, you know, things just like culminate in a way that make me happy. My fangirl brain, when I look back at my Twilight phase, which was a very interesting time in my life, Eclipse and the first Twilight movie are definitely my favorites of the group. And so, let's get into it. In the last installment of this series, I didn't really bring any character differences forward, as in the first one, I talked a lot about the characters that are in all the Twilight books. Bella, Edward, Jacob, they don't really change throughout the movies. Maybe some changes, but nothing like dramatic. But today I thought I would bring back a few character differences from characters that are major parts in this book/movie, including Victoria, Riley, and a few of the Volturi members that do appear in the movie and in the book. Victoria. Victoria is described as having red hair and acting cat-like. You know, very graceful, very like on her toes, 9 lives, if you will. And I definitely see it. Now, in the movies, Victoria was played by 2 different actresses. One actress for Twilight and New Moon, and another actress for Eclipse. So we're talking mostly about the Eclipse actress today. So, obviously in the movie, she has red hair, and I get cat-like vibes from her. There might be a more thorough description of her somewhere. I just couldn't find it when I looked. But I mean, she looks like a vampire. She's got red hair. She acts like a cat. You know, I think in the book she's a little more subdued in her actions. In the movie it's more like she's like revengeful and really mean and just like more emotional, I think I saw. But I mean, characteristically, physical appearance looks pretty good. Then there's Riley. Riley is described as being changed around the same age as Bella, about 6'3", tall, red eyes that were originally brown, and shining blonde hair, so I'm guessing very bright. Platinum blonde, just woo! The actor who played Riley in the Eclipse movie does have blonde hair. It's more of like a dirty blonde. Red eyes, his normal eyes, his original eyes. The actor's eyes are brown. And I think the actor is like 5'10", so a little shorter, but as I've said in the past, height really doesn't matter. Then the Volturi. Now, the Volturi had a big part in the last book, and I didn't really mention their physical appearances, so since they'll be coming back later in Breaking Dawn, I'll go over Aro and all of them. Today I'm going to be talking about a few of the Volturi members that have a part in Eclipse, including Dimitri, Jane, and Felix. Now, Jane is Alec's sister. Her power is literally looking into your soul and causing you such excruciating pain that you tip over, as seen in the New Moon movie. Jane's description is quite similar to hers in the book, but I believe that her and her brother Alec are supposed to be children. Now, they could be teenagers aged up in the movie, but I believe they're supposed to be kids in the books, if I remember correctly. Also, she's described as having brown hair, not blonde hair, like she does in the films. Felix, I believe Felix is the one that beat the crap out of Edward in New Moon, the battle, in the movie that was not in the book. Felix is described as being 6'7", with a muscular body, a slightly olive complexion, and short cropped black hair. In the movie, he is quite tall. I don't think he's 6'7", though. He's got a very similar build. His hair is more of like a dark brown than it is black. But other than that, I mean, it's pretty close. Out of the Volturi members in this movie, Dimitri is definitely the one that has changed the most. He has an olive complexion, which I believe every vampire ever has this complexion at least in these books. He's very lean and muscular. He's about 6'3". He's got dark hair that reaches his shoulders and red eyes. Now, in the movie, he does not have a ginormous part, but he is there, and he does not look anything like this description. The actor that plays Dimitri is 5'11", so just a few inches shorter. He has blonde hair that's very short compared to what it's supposed to be. Red eyes, olive complexion. It's mostly the hair. The height is only a few inches shorter. It really doesn't matter. It's the hair. The hair is completely different. Now, in the movie, Alec is a part of the group that shows up, and I believe that he is not in the book, it's not mentioned that Alec is there. I think it's those 3 or 2 that show up with the battle, and then it's like unnamed members of the Volturi. But in the movie, Alec is there. Here are a few minor differences. As I've stated, there are differences, like things are different colors, or different brand, or a line is said differently, or things like that. These are minor differences that are a little bigger than color changes. At the end of the previous book, Jacob brought the motorcycles that she'd originally brought to his house to Charlie's house and was just trying to get her grounded, which worked. She was grounded. At the beginning of the Eclipse book, she has very limited time to spend with Edward because she's grounded. She eventually is ungrounded as long as she goes and hangs with her other friends. She, is a loner. And in the movie, she has a little more leeway. She just basically has a curfew because obviously at the beginning of Eclipse, they're in their meadow together. And if she had a lot of limited time to see Edward, that probably wouldn't have happened. In the movie, Bella punches Jacob in the face after he kisses her without her permission. Justified, 100%. However, Charlie's reaction to her punching him in the face is different from the movie to the book. In the movie, when he finds out that Bella broke her hand punching Jacob in the face because he kissed her without her permission, he acts very shocked. Like, what the hell? Like, what? In the book, he actually cheers Jacob on and and I think his exact words were, "Good for you," which, that's not the reaction I would have if a boy kissed my daughter without her permission and then she punched him in the face, but whatever. A lot of people believe this reaction happened because he hates Edward and he likes Jacob more and is like, oh, hell yeah, she should get with Jacob. But it's like, I don't know about that one. On the topic of the unwanted kiss, when it happens, in the book, Bella actually asks Edward to beat the crap out of Jacob, like wants him to hurt Jacob. Like, he kissed me without my permission, beat him up. In the movie, Bella's like, I don't want you guys to fight. Please don't fight. It's fine. She doesn't, blame Jacob for anything. She kind of lets it go. And I don't know if I'd go as far as to be like, yeah, you should definitely beat the crap out of him. But, Edward could maybe punch him in the face or kick him in the nuts or something. In both the movie and the book, Rosalie tells Bella her story and how she became a vampire. However, in the book, there's a little more to it. In the book, there's this slumber party that is kind of mentioned in the movie. It's used as an excuse, but a slumber party doesn't actually happen. In the book, it kind of happens, which I'll touch on a little later. But at this party, Rosalie tells Bella her turning story and also mentions a few characters that just never are mentioned in the movie. She mentioned her friend Vera, who had a loving husband and a child named Henry, and obviously Rosalie was quite jealous of this. And she turned Emmett because he reminded her of Henry. So I'm guessing Henry grew up, or maybe her husband was also named Henry. Because I'm like, I don't know if I'd look at a baby and go, looks like Emmett. Twins. But it gives more life to Rosalie and her story, like mentioning like more of why she doesn't want Bella to become a vampire, because all she ever wanted was to get married and have kids, and she never got to have that. And in the movie, they still kind of go over that, but they just don't mention that side of the story. During the battle, Jasper's trying to help everyone out because obviously he has the most knowledge of newborns. In the book, during this battle, he puts himself in front of Alice and gets bit by one of these newborns. It turns to her calling him an overprotective fool because, he's putting himself in the line of danger to protect her. But That's love. This type of stuff shows how far Jasper's willing to go to protect the ones he loves. And it would have been nice to show some of this in the movie, even if it was a single moment where he stood in front of Alice, or this moment where he does get bit by one of the newborns, just to show, like, hey, he's putting himself in the line of danger for those he loves. Jasper's not perfect, but it would have been nice. Now, here are some of the major differences that I noticed. Obviously, I might not be able to get through all of the major differences, but here are the ones that I found. Part of Charlie's condition in ungrounding Bella is that she hangs out with her other friends. She does this by offering to help Angela with her graduation invitations, allowing them to spend some time together and give Angela some spotlight, because the movies really downgrade Bella's friends. Not saying they're ginormous characters in the books, but in the movies, they're a side thought. You know, they're there, but are they? They upplay her relationship with Jessica, while in the book she is closer to Angela because they're actual friends. The boys kind of want to date her, and Jessica's like on the fence of I hate you, I like you, frenemies style. So they just like cut that out entirely. In both the movie and the book, Bella visits her mother in Florida, getting to spend time with one another before she becomes a vampire like she's dreamed. In the movie, Bella's mother gives her a quilt made of all of the shirts they had gotten from concerts and places they had been to keep her warm up at her college that she's going to. In the book, I believe this quilt does not exist. So it was like a nice little touch. Not a giant change, but it was big enough that I thought it should be here. A big part of this movie is that Bella misses Jacob. She wants to see Jacob, hang out with him, and Edward's big old now, which I think is completely unjustified for the fact that you abandoned her for like 6 months, and then you come back to town and you're being like a protective bitch. You're just being way too protective. It's getting to the point of creepy. So as in both the movie and the book, Bella tries to go to the reservation to see Jacob, and Edward messes with her truck so she can't. In the book, they have this conversation. She goes out to the truck and then he breaks it. In the movie, he breaks the truck and then they have the conversation inside of the truck. But in both ways, Edward does not want her seeing Jacob and basically bans her from doing so, which is not okay. In the book, Edward's obsession over keeping Bella away from Jacob gets to a point where it's just creepy. At one point, he's going hunting, so he asks Alice to pick Bella up from work, because she has a job in the books. Pick Bella up from work, canceling her plans with Jacob, because she was supposed to hang with Jacob, basically being like, you're not hanging with Jacob. And then taking Bella to the Cullen residence, saying that they're having a sleepover, when in reality, she's not allowed to leave. So this is, kidnapping, Edward. You are taking Bella against her will, because you don't want her to see another man. Jealous much? In the movie, this is completely taken out. Obviously, Bella doesn't have a job. She's not really kidnapped. Edward is protective, but he's not as bad as Book Edward. Book Edward has his moments of being like, okay, we can do this. And then there's other moments that are really, really bad. Movie Edward is kind of like mediocre, like middle ground bad until a certain point, but he's mostly just bad the whole time. He just has a thing where he's like, you cannot be with Jacob. Which I guess, vampires versus werewolves, I understand she's your woman, but you don't have the right to be this protective after you abandoned her. Riley, Victoria, and the army of newborns are a giant part of Eclipse. It starts out with Riley getting attacked and being turned by Victoria. Throughout the movie, you see them gaining their army, interacting with one another. The big battle happens. Edward mentions that he recognizes Riley from their town. Charlie's actually investigating this case, so he's putting himself in the line of danger, trying to find Riley without really knowing why he's putting himself in danger. And there's like a big overarching, like, they're connected throughout everything. In the book, that's not the case. No one really knows who Riley is, where he's from, or how long he's been missing. He's kind of just there, which is definitely a awesome change for the movie because he just feels more involved. Speaking of the newborns, in the movie they have a ginormous role to play throughout the entire movie. Riley is seen putting together this army, them slowly traveling to Forks, and eventually the giant battle in the field, which is iconic. In the book, the newborns aren't really shown until the battle at the end, and before then they're mentioned in passing by Jasper, but other than that, like, they're basically not there until the end. There's nothing in between. In the movie, Edward and Jacob don't have a great relationship. They try to be civil for Bella, like when they're stuck up on the mountain in the tent and Jacob has to warm Bella up. They're not besties. They don't like each other. They're just kind of dealing with one another. And, you know, they're just doing what they have to do, not because they want to. In the book, he's a little more lenient, I guess. He realizes that his protectiveness is hurting Bella, and so he relents in allowing her to hang out with Jacob and the wolves and allow them to help protect her. He's not happy about it. Neither version of Edward is happy about this situation, but I think the book Edward is a little more lenient, even though he is not that great in certain moments. Early on in the movie, Jacob's tribe talks about the third wife. The third wife's son killed a cold one, and the cold one's mate came to town to get revenge. It killed her son and was about to kill her husband when she sacrificed herself to save him. She stabbed herself, distracting the vampire long enough for the werewolf to kill her. Now this, I believe, is the first point that they ever transition into wolves. Their grief of her sacrifice caused them to transition into wolves. And so Bella was very fascinated by this story, and makes sense because later on in the movie and book, she uses this exact tactic to distract Victoria. In both the movie and the book, Edward and Victoria fight. However, in the book, Edward is not as worse off as he is in the movie. Bella attempts to cut herself with a rock, and Victoria sees this, and Edward kills her. In the movie, she actually cuts herself. In the book, she never actually gets to the point of cutting herself. She, like, brings the rock up to her arm, gasps, like, this is gonna hurt. In the movie, she actually cuts her arm and is bleeding. In the book, Edward claims this was a very unnecessary risk because he had no worries. Like, he was gonna end Victoria. Like, there was no need to worry about it. In the movie, he was worse off. I mean, at one point, he was almost beheaded by Victoria. So, you know, maybe he needed the extra help. Also, a side note off of this, in the movie, Edward burns Victoria's body with a lighter, which they must be really flammable if that lights a whole body on fire, but that's fine. In the book, he actually has help ripping Victoria and Riley to pieces, and then they do a giant bonfire with the pair. In the movie, it's just shown that Victoria gets burned. Riley is dragged off by Seth, I believe. So I'm guessing that they eventually went back and burned his body, but they don't show it. One of the biggest changes between the book and the movie that definitely was necessary was in the book, it never really wavers from Bella's perspective, and since Bella is not there during the battle, you don't really get the scope of it. Bella is up on the mountain with Edward, and after their run-in with Victoria, they head back down and they kind of hear the aftermath of the battle, but because she wasn't there, you don't get to see much of it. In the movie, they split back and forth between the mountain and the battle, so we get to see what's going on, how characters are interacting with one another, and the more cinematic moments. Newborns falling to the ground, wolves ripping their heads off, people getting cornered, people getting thrown. It's more entertaining, and definitely a change that I appreciate, because it wouldn't have been very interesting. You know, obviously the battle with Victoria was cool, but it would have been kind of boring if they had the Victoria battle and then we never got to see the actual big battle that they've been talking about the whole movie. In both the movie and the book, Jacob is hurt. A newborn wraps its arms around Jacob and basically crushes him, breaking ribs and just messing him up. In the book, Edward sees this happen through Seth's thoughts and brings Bella down to the battlefield, but before Bella can even make it, she faints. In the movie, they're already at the battlefield by the time Jacob is hurt, and she never faints. She runs straight to Jacob's side to comfort him. In both, he is dramatically hurt by this newborn. However, in the book, he has a hard time transitioning back to human form, because obviously Carlisle doesn't know how to care for wolves, so Jacob needs to turn back to human so Carlisle can actually do something to help him. In the movie, he basically turns right back into a human right away. Like, there's no hesitation. Like, he just, hello. Obviously, there's probably a few changes that I missed. If there's any prominent ones that you noticed while you were reading the Eclipse book, please comment down below. In honesty, sometimes the adaptation of a book is not as good as the actual book. However, I do think Eclipse is better than the book, because Eclipse just overall gives a better story than the actual book does. Obviously, when you're going from the perspective of one character, you're not going to be able to get an overall story, because if they're not there, they can't see it. So I understand. But it's nice to be able to see, you know, what's happening up on the mountain and what's happening in the battlefield, and getting the actual, like, overall picture and seeing more of Riley and this newborn army rather than them just showing up at the end and not even getting to see the battle, just hearing about it. So I definitely think that was a great change for this movie. It's my favorite out of the series. I just love the overall arching story and everything put together, and it's just great. I think my favorite moment throughout the entire movie is the battle at the end. Also, when Bella punches Jacob in the face. It's just very satisfying, justified, needed, if you will. Pretty iconic. Also, Rosalie murdering her husband-to-be because he's a piece of garbage. Her walking in that wedding dress with bright red eyes. Oh, queen. That was awesome. My least favorite moment was probably when they killed Bree Tanner. She was one of the major newborns, I guess. She has a book, I believe. Stephanie wrote a book about her. I've not read it, but she is killed. I don't think that was necessary. I understand that the Volturi was like, they can't live, but it wasn't her fault. Okay, she was turned against her will. It's not like she had a choice in this matter, but whatever. So that makes me angry. So, Bree deserves better. Just saying, Bree deserves better. And maybe the kiss, not the one where she punches him in the face, but the one where she kisses him so he stays and he doesn't go down to battle and hurt himself. Because it's kind of gross, because it's like in both the book and the movie, Edward, you know, they're basically going to get married. Jacob finds out in different ways. In the book, I believe he's in wolf form. When he finds out, he howls sadly and runs off. And in the movie, Edward is bringing up that they're getting married knowing Jacob is listening, which is very petty. Very petty. And she tries to kiss him to stay because he's basically threatening that he's going to go down there and kill himself. Like a loser. So she kisses him to be like, please don't do that. And it's kind of just, it's hurtful in a way, because obviously she's chosen Edward. I mean, she's stringing Jacob along with these little moments, and doing that to him, knowing full well you're going to marry Edward, is just rude to Jacob. Jacob's not perfect, neither is Edward, but the fact that you did that is just kind of mean. Not saying it's not cinematically beautiful, because it is. I mean, they're on top of a mountain, the sun is shining, whatever. It's just kind of mean to Jacob. I don't think he deserved that. Just saying. That's a personal opinion. And I'm Team Edward, so. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll be back again next week with another one, and next month with the final installment of this series. I'm thinking of just doing both movies in one video. It all depends on how many changes were made between the movie and the books, because obviously they split Breaking Dawn into 2 parts, And so I might split it into 2 videos if there's so many differences that this video will be a million years long. So stay tuned. Either there'll be a part 1, part 2 situation, or there'll just be one really long video. Comment down below which one you like. Alright guys, I will see you next week with another one.